The Death Star hung in space, like a mechanized moon, incomplete, yet already operational, a monument to imperial power that dwarfed even the forest moon of Endor below. Within its throne room, an ancient drama was reaching its climax. Three figures stood at the precipice of destiny. The Emperor, twisted and malevolent, watched with yellow eyes that burned with satisfaction. Luke Skywalker, young and defiant, writhed on the floor as blue lightning coursed through his body. And Darth Vader, the Dark Lord of the Sith, stood motionless in his black armor, listening to the mechanical rhythm of his own breathing. This was the moment, the fulcrum point upon which the fate of the galaxy balanced. In our timeline, Anakin Skywalker would awaken within that mechanical shell. Love for his son would triumph over decades of darkness. He would lift the Emperor and cast him down into the reactor shaft, sacrificing everything to save Luke and destroy the Sith. But what if that awakening never came? What if the remnants of Anakin Skywalker remained buried, too deep, suffocated under layers of rage and pain and bitter acceptance? What if Vader's mechanical heart stayed cold as he watched his son die? The Emperor's laughter echoed through the throne room, a sound of pure, malicious joy. His fingers crackled with dark side energy as he poured Force lightning into Luke's body. The young Jedi's screams were music to Palpatine's ears. This was the culmination of his grand design, the final crushing of hope, the demonstration of absolute power. "Young fool," Palpatine rasped, his voice dripping with contempt. "Only now, at the end, do you understand. Your feeble skills are no match for the power of the dark side. You have paid the price for your lack of vision." Luke's body convulsed, his skeleton visible through his flesh as the electrical energy consumed him. He reached out with trembling hands, not toward the Emperor, but toward his father. His voice, when it came, was barely a whisper beneath the crackle of lightning and the Emperor's cackling. "Father, please." Vader watched. Through his helmet's enhanced vision, he saw every detail. The way Luke's young face contorted in agony, the desperation in his eyes, the hand reaching toward him, seeking salvation that would not come. For a moment, something flickered in the depths of Vader's consciousness. A memory of sand and binary suns, a voice saying, "Ani, you can't." A woman's face, beautiful and sad. But that moment passed like smoke. The voice of Anakin Skywalker, if it had ever truly spoken, was silenced by the roar of machinery and the weight of 23 years of darkness. Vader's mechanical respirator continued its steady rhythm. His hands, encased in black gloves, remained at his sides. He did not move. "Lord Vader," the Emperor commanded, his voice cutting through the crackling energy. "Witness the end of the rebellion. See how the last of the Jedi dies, as they all must die before the power of the Sith." "Yes, my master," Vader replied, his voice as cold and mechanical as his suit. Luke's eyes widened in horror as he understood. His father was not going to save him. There would be no redemption, no return to the light. The Jedi had failed. He had failed. As the lightning intensified, consuming his flesh and burning away his strength, Luke Skywalker's last thought was of his sister, hoping against hope that Leia would survive what was to come. The Emperor increased the intensity of his attack, pouring decades of accumulated dark side power into the young Jedi. Luke's body arched one final time, a scream dying in his throat. Then he collapsed, smoke rising from his charred robes. His breathing slowed, then stopped. His hand, which had been reaching toward his father, fell limply to the floor. Silence filled the throne room, broken only by Vader's respirator and the distant sounds of battle from beyond the viewport. The Emperor lowered his hands, examining his work with satisfaction. He had expected to enjoy this moment more, had anticipated the delicious irony of turning Luke Skywalker to the dark side. But this was even better. The complete and utter destruction of hope was a victory more absolute than mere corruption. "It is done," Palpatine said, his voice carrying a note of finality. The last of the Jedi is no more. He turned to Vader, studying his apprentice carefully. You have done well, my friend. To stand firm against the manipulations of your own flesh and blood requires strength that many lack. You have proven yourself worthy of your position at my side. Vader approached Luke's body slowly, his boots heavy on the floor. He looked down at the young man, at the face that bore such resemblance to both Padme and himself. Something in his chest, beneath all the machinery and scar tissue, felt hollow, but he pushed that feeling aside, burying it with all the others. He was weak, Vader said, his voice devoid of emotion. He chose the Jedi path, and the Jedi are extinct. It is the natural order of things. The Emperor smiled, a grotesque expression on his withered face. Indeed. And now, with his death, the rebellion will crumble. Their precious symbol, their great hope, lies dead at our feet. When word of this spreads, when they learn that Luke Skywalker challenged the Empire and failed, their resolve will shatter. Outside, the Battle of Endor raged on. The rebel fleet, unaware of the tragedy unfolding in the throne room, continued their desperate assault on the Death Star. Admiral Akbar coordinated the defense from the bridge of Home One, calling out orders as Star Destroyers unleashed their firepower. Lando Calrissian piloted the Millennium Falcon through a storm of TIE fighters, racing toward the Death Star's reactor core. On the forest moon below, Han Solo and Leia fought alongside the Ewoks to destroy the shield generator. They were winning. Against all odds, the rebellion was on the verge of victory. The shield generator fell, consumed by explosions as Ewok warriors celebrated. The way was clear for the starfighters to enter the superstructure. Hope bloomed in the hearts of thousands of rebel soldiers, but in the throne room, that hope died with a young Jedi who had believed in his father's redemption. The Emperor moved to the viewport, gazing down at the battle below with his hands clasped behind his back. Soon, Lord Vader, we shall deal with the remains of this pathetic alliance. Their fleet is already taking heavy losses. With the boy's death, we have eliminated the only threat that could have challenged our rule. The Skywalker bloodline ends here. Vader stood motionless, processing these words. The Skywalker bloodline, Padme's bloodline, the son he had never known, now dead by his inaction. He waited for grief, for regret, for some echo of the man he had been. But there was only emptiness, a void where such feelings might have once resided. What of the girl? Vader asked. The boy's sister. She remains alive. Palpatine turned, his yellow eyes gleaming with interest. Ah, yes. Princess Leia Organa, your daughter, though she does not yet know it. Tell me, my friend, can you sense her presence? Vader reached out through the Force, extending his awareness beyond the throne room. He felt the currents of battle, the fear and determination of thousands of combatants. And there, on the forest moon below, a bright flame of Force sensitivity, Leia, his daughter, another reminder of Padme, another connection to a past he had destroyed. I sense her, Vader confirmed. She is strong in the Force, though untrained. She leads the rebel strike team on Endor's surface. The Emperor's smile widened. Excellent. Then we shall have the opportunity to deal with both Skywalker children. Though the boy chose death over submission, perhaps the girl will prove more amenable to persuasion. Or if not, she will follow her brother into oblivion. Vader considered this. Another Skywalker, another chance to turn someone to the dark side, to train an apprentice who shared his bloodline, or another threat to eliminate. The choice would depend on what served the Empire best. She would require extensive training, Vader said. Her affiliation with the rebellion runs deep. She may prove as stubborn as her brother. Then we shall break that stubbornness, Palpatine replied. or we shall break her. Either way, the legacy of Anakin Skywalker will serve the Empire, one way or another. The lights in the throne room flickered as an explosion rocked the Death Star. The battle was intensifying. Palpatine frowned, reaching out with his own senses to assess the situation. What he felt brought a flash of anger to his ancient features. "The shield is down," he hissed. "The ground team has succeeded. The rebel starfighters will soon breach our defenses." Vader moved to the viewport, watching as X-Wings and A-Wings penetrated the Death Star's superstructure. The Millennium Falcon led the charge, its distinctive profile unmistakable even at this distance. The plan was working. The rebellion's desperate gambit was succeeding. "We must evacuate, my master," Vader said. "The station will soon be destroyed." But Palpatine's anger had transformed into something else, something darker and more terrible. His eyes burned with fury, and dark side energy crackled around his fingertips. "No, I will not flee before this rabble. I am the Emperor. I am the master of the dark side, and I will show these insects what true power means." The Emperor raised his hands, and Vader felt an immense gathering of Force energy. Palpatine was channeling power on a scale Vader had rarely witnessed, drawing upon decades of accumulated strength and the dark side nexus that permeated the Death Star itself. "Watch, Lord Vader," Palpatine commanded. "Watch as I demonstrate why the Sith cannot be defeated by mere military force." Through the Force, the Emperor reached out across the vast distances of space. He touched the minds of the rebel pilots, penetrating the Death Star's interior, filling them with terror and confusion. TIE fighter pilots found their aim suddenly perfect, their reactions supernaturally fast. The currents of battle began to shift as the Emperor's will imposed itself upon reality. Lando Calrissian felt a wave of dread wash over him as he guided the Falcon through the superstructure tunnels. His hands began to shake on the controls. Beside him, Wedge Antilles experienced similar doubt, a sudden certainty that they were about to die, that their mission was doomed. "Something's wrong," Lando muttered, fighting against the fear that threatened to overwhelm him. "I can feel it." On the surface of Endor, Leia gasped as pain lanced through her head. She clutched her temples, staggering against Han. Through the Force, she felt something terrible, a presence of such malevolence that it made her stomach turn, and beneath that, a absence, a void where something bright had been. "Luke," she whispered, tears forming in her eyes. "No, no, no, no." Han caught her, concern etched on his face. "Leia, what is it? What's wrong?" But Leia couldn't answer. The knowledge was too terrible, too absolute. Luke was gone. Her brother, her twin, the connection she had felt her entire life without understanding it, had been severed. He was dead. The battle continued its chaotic dance, but something fundamental had changed. The rebel forces, sensing their impending victory, had begun to celebrate too soon. Now doubt crept in, fear undermining their determination. Ships that had been holding formation began to break apart. Pilots who had been pressing their advantage suddenly found themselves defensive, uncertain. In the throne room, Vader watched his master work with grim fascination. This was power beyond what lightsabers could achieve, beyond simple force manipulation. This was the dark side in its purest form, an expression of will so absolute that it bent reality itself. "You see, my friend," Palpatine said, his voice strained with effort. "This is why the Jedi failed. They sought balance, harmony, limitations. But the dark side knows no limits. It is hunger and will made manifest, and through it we shall crush this rebellion utterly." The Death Star shuddered again, more violently this time. Alarms began to sound throughout the station. Damage reports flooded the command centers. The starfighters were getting closer to the reactor core, despite the Emperor's interference. There were too many of them, too much momentum behind their assault. "My master," Vader said urgently, Even your power cannot stop them all. We must retreat to your shuttle. We can continue the battle from your flagship." Palpatine's face twisted with rage, but he recognized the wisdom in Vader's words. The battle meditation was taking its toll, and the rebel forces, though wavering, had not broken completely. To remain on the station was to risk death, and while the Emperor was confident in his power, he was not foolish enough to test it against a reactor explosion. "Very well," Palpatine spat. "But mark this moment, Lord Vader. The rebellion will pay dearly for this temporary victory. Every system that supported them will burn. Every world that gave them shelter will be reduced to ash. I will make them curse the day they thought to challenge the Empire." Vader moved to the throne room's exit, but paused, looking back at Luke's body. The young Jedi lay where he had fallen, his face peaceful despite the violence of his death. For the briefest instant, Vader wondered what might have been different if he had chosen another path. Then he turned away, following his master toward the shuttle bay. Behind them, Luke Skywalker's body remained in the throne room, a testament to shattered hopes and roads not taken. The last of the Jedi, dead at the hands of Sith lightning, witnessed by a father who would not save him. The Emperor's shuttle launched from the Death Star moments before the Millennium Falcon, and its escorts reached the reactor core. The explosion that followed was cataclysmic, a supernova of light and energy that consumed the massive battle station. Thousands of Imperial personnel died in an instant, their lives snuffed out as the reactor's chain reaction tore through every level of the structure. In space, the rebel fleet erupted in celebration. They had done it. Against impossible odds, they had destroyed the second Death Star. The Emperor's superweapon, the symbol of Imperial might, was gone. But their celebration was premature. They did not know that Palpatine had escaped. They did not know that Luke Skywalker was dead, consumed by the explosion he had died trying to prevent. They believed they had won a great victory, when in truth they had only won a battle. The war was about to enter its darkest phase, the Emperor's new order. The Imperial shuttle Tidarium glided through space toward the massive superstar destroyer Executor, which hung in formation with a dozen star destroyers at the edge of the Endor system. The rebel fleet, still celebrating their victory over the Death Star, had not yet noticed the shuttle's departure. Their sensors were overwhelmed with debris and radiation from the explosion, creating a perfect cover for the Emperor's escape. On the shuttle's bridge, Palpatine sat in silence, his yellow eyes burning with barely contained fury. Vader stood nearby, his presence a dark pillar of mechanical efficiency. Neither spoke as they watched the Executor grow larger in the viewport, the massive dagger-shaped vessel dwarfing even the star destroyers that escorted it. The ship was a testament to Imperial engineering, 8 kilometers of durasteel and weapon systems designed to project power across entire star systems. The loss of the Death Star was significant, but not catastrophic. The Emperor had contingency plans built upon contingency plans, layers of redundancy that ensured the Empire's survival, even in the face of catastrophic setbacks. The station had been a symbol, yes, a monument to Imperial supremacy that could reduce entire worlds to rubble with a single shot. And it had been a powerful weapon, capable of enforcing compliance through fear alone. But it was not irreplaceable. The Empire possessed shipyards throughout the galaxy, construction facilities that could build another Death Star if necessary, though such a project would require years and astronomical resources. What mattered was that he had survived, and more importantly, that Luke Skywalker had not. The boy had been the real threat, not the Death Star's destruction. A battle station could be rebuilt, but a Jedi who understood the Force, who possessed the Skywalker bloodline's legendary power, who could inspire billions across the galaxy. Such a figure was truly dangerous. With Luke dead, consumed by the station's explosion after being struck down by Sith lightning, that threat was eliminated permanently. Palpatine allowed himself a moment of satisfaction as he contemplated the future. The rebels believed they had won a great victory today. They had destroyed the Empire's ultimate weapon, dealt a blow to Imperial morale, proven that the Emperor was not invincible. But they had paid a price for that victory that they did not yet understand. Luke Skywalker, their symbol of hope, their last Jedi Knight, the hero of Yavin who had inspired countless beings to resist Imperial rule, was gone. Without him, the rebellion would slowly wither and die, starved of the mystical element that had sustained it through its darkest hours. The shuttle's communications officer approached cautiously, his face pale with fear. Reporting to the Emperor was always dangerous, doubly so when bearing news of a defeat. Your Majesty, we are receiving communications from the Executor. Admiral Piet requests permission to engage the rebel fleet while they are still celebrating. Palpatine considered this. The rebel fleet was indeed vulnerable, their formation scattered as ships broke off to perform victory rolls and transmit celebratory messages. A concentrated Imperial assault could inflict devastating casualties, might even destroy a significant portion of their capital ships. But such an attack would also risk Imperial assets unnecessarily. The rebels had already achieved their objective, destroyed the Death Star. They would be withdrawing soon, racing to escape before Imperial reinforcements arrived. Better to let them go, let them believe they had truly won, than to force a battle that might cost the Empire ships it could not easily replace. No, the Emperor said, his voice carrying across the shuttle's bridge. Let them have their moment. We will strike when they are weakest, when they have lowered their guard and grown complacent in their victory. Today, they won a battle, but the war is far from over, and we have just eliminated their greatest asset. Time is on our side. The communications officer bowed and retreated, relieved to have escaped the Emperor's presence without punishment. Palpatine returned his attention to the viewport, watching as the Executor grew ever larger. The ship would serve as his mobile command center until they returned to Coruscant, a floating fortress from which he could coordinate the Empire's response to this temporary setback. Vader remained silent throughout this exchange, his thoughts hidden behind the impassive mask. But the Emperor could sense his apprentice's turmoil, the conflicting emotions that swirled beneath that mechanical exterior. Vader was disciplined, controlled, his commitment to the dark side unquestionable. But killing Luke, or rather allowing Luke to die, had affected him in ways that Vader himself might not fully recognize. The bond between father and son, even when one had fallen to darkness, was not so easily severed. It would take careful management to ensure that Vader's loyalty remained absolute, that no seeds of doubt took root in the fertile soil of paternal grief. "You are troubled, my friend," Palpatine observed, his voice carrying a note of false sympathy that had manipulated countless beings over his long life. "The boy's death weighs upon you, despite your protestations to the contrary." Vader's mechanical breathing continued its steady rhythm, the sound that had become synonymous with fear throughout the galaxy. For a long moment, he did not respond, and the Emperor wondered if he would deny the accusation. Then Vader spoke, his voice carrying the artificial resonance that his suit's vocoder imparted to every word. "Luke Skywalker chose his path, my master. He rejected the dark side, clung to Jedi teachings that led only to destruction. His death was inevitable from the moment he decided to oppose us. I feel nothing for him but the satisfaction of eliminating a threat to the Empire." The words were perfect, exactly what a loyal Sith apprentice should say. But Palpatine had not maintained his power for decades by taking such declarations at face value. He probed deeper with the Force, extending his consciousness to touch the edges of Vader's mind, feeling for the truth beneath the mechanical certainty. What he found was interesting. Vader believed what he was saying, or at least he had convinced himself that he believed it. The Dark Lord had spent the hours since Luke's death reinforcing his mental barriers, burying any trace of sentiment or regret beneath layers of dark side discipline. Anakin Skywalker was dead, murdered along with the Jedi Order, and Vader would not allow his son's death to resurrect that weak and foolish man. This was what Vader told himself, repeated like a mantra in his meditation chamber, and through sheer force of will, through decades of practice at suppressing unwanted emotions, he had almost succeeded in making it true. Almost, but not quite. Beneath all the control, all the discipline, all the mechanical certainty, there remained a hairline fracture in Vader's absolute commitment to darkness. It was small, barely noticeable even to the Emperor's acute force senses, but it was there. A tiny seed of doubt, a whisper of what if, a ghost of Anakin Skywalker that refused to be completely buried. Palpatine made a mental note to monitor this carefully. For now, Vader's loyalty was secure. The Dark Lord had proven himself in the throne room, had chosen power over sentiment when it mattered most. But that hairline fracture could grow, if not properly managed. The Emperor would need to ensure that Vader's descent into absolute darkness continued, that any possibility of redemption was permanently sealed away. The corrupting of Leia Organa would serve that purpose admirably. By forcing Vader to participate in his daughter's fall, by making him complicit in the destruction of his entire family line, Palpatine would cement his apprentice's loyalty forever. Indeed, the Emperor replied, accepting Vader's statement without further challenge. The boy's death has served us well, but there remains much work to be done. The rebellion will not crumble immediately. They will need to be shown definitively and repeatedly that their cause is hopeless. That will require careful planning and precise execution. The shuttle docked in the Executor's primary hangar bay. Stormtroopers and officers lined the deck at attention as the Emperor descended the ramp, his gnarled hands gripping a cane that was more affectation than necessity. The staff was actually a cunningly disguised weapon, capable of channeling Force energy and delivering devastating attacks. But few knew this. The Emperor preferred to appear weak and frail, the better to lull potential enemies into underestimating him. It was a lesson he had learned long ago in the Senate, where appearing harmless often provided strategic advantages that obvious strength could not. Vader followed, his cape billowing behind him in the artificial wind generated by the hangar's atmospheric processors. The assembled troops snapped to even stricter attention at his approach, their fear palpable even through their armor. The Dark Lord of the Sith had that effect on people. His very presence radiated menace, promised death to anyone who failed or disobeyed. It was a reputation carefully cultivated over decades, and it served the Empire well. Admiral Piet, commander of the Executor, stood at the forefront of the welcoming party, his face pale with barely concealed terror. He had survived this long in Imperial service by being competent, efficient, and extremely careful not to anger his superiors. Standing before both the Emperor and Darth Vader, simultaneously tested that survival instinct to its absolute limits. The slightest mistake, the smallest error in protocol, could result in death. Piet had seen too many of his predecessors die for lesser offenses to have any illusions about his own expendability. "Your Majesty," Piet said, bowing low, his voice steady despite his inner terror, "the Executor and the entire fleet are at your command. We stand ready to pursue and destroy the rebel forces, to avenge the loss of the Death Star, and eliminate this threat once and for all." Palpatine waved a dismissive hand, the gesture carrying more menace than a shout would have. "No, Admiral. Let them have their moment of celebration. Let them believe they have achieved something meaningful. Their joy will make their eventual destruction all the sweeter, and in their complacency, they will make mistakes that we can exploit." He shuffled toward the turbolift, his movements slow and deliberate, projecting the image of an aged man diminished by time. But those who knew him understood that this frailty was an illusion. The Emperor was perhaps the most dangerous being in the galaxy, his power in the Force exceeded by none, his mastery of Sith techniques absolute. With Vader and Piet following at a respectful distance, Palpatine entered the turbolift, and the doors hissed shut behind them. "Take us out of the system, Admiral," Palpatine continued as the lift began its ascent toward the bridge. "We return to Coruscant. There is much work to be done, and I will not conduct the Empire's business from a ship, no matter how impressive. The Empire needs to see its Emperor, needs to be reminded that despite today's setback, my power remains absolute." "At once, Your Majesty," Piet replied, relief evident in his voice. He had feared the Emperor would blame him for the station's destruction, would hold him accountable for failing to prevent the rebel attack. Many officers had died for less. The fact that Palpatine seemed more focused on future plans than past failures suggested that Piet might survive this encounter, after all. The turbolift reached the bridge, a vast chamber filled with control stations and view screens, officers working with focused intensity to coordinate the executor's systems. At the center of the bridge stood a raised platform, from which the ship's commander could observe all operations. Piet took his position there, immediately beginning to issue orders that would take the fleet out of the Endor system and set course for the core worlds. As the executor's engines fired and the massive ship began to move away from Endor, Palpatine settled into the ship's throne room, a smaller version of the one aboard the Death Star, but no less imposing. The chamber was designed to project power and intimidation, with high ceilings, dark walls, and a throne positioned to ensure that anyone who entered had to approach across a long expanse of floor, feeling progressively smaller with each step. Vader stood beside him, ever vigilant, ever faithful. "The boy's death changes everything," Palpatine mused, his voice thoughtful despite his earlier rage. He was already thinking ahead, already planning how to exploit this victory. Luke Skywalker was more than just another rebel, more than just a Jedi. He was their symbol, their last Jedi, their hope incarnate. The common citizens of the galaxy looked to him and saw the possibility that the Empire could be defeated, that the Force could be wielded for good rather than domination. With him gone, that hope dies. And without hope, the rebellion has nothing. The shuttle docked in the executor's primary hangar bay. Stormtroopers and officers lined the deck at attention as the Emperor descended the ramp, his gnarled hands gripping a cane. Vader followed, his cape billowing behind him. Admiral Piet, commander of the Executor, stood at the forefront of the welcoming party, his face pale with barely concealed terror. "Your Majesty," Piet said, bowing low, "the Executor and the entire fleet are at your command. We stand ready to pursue and destroy the rebel forces." Palpatine waved a dismissive hand. "No, Admiral. Let them have their moment of celebration. Let them believe they have achieved something meaningful. Their joy will make their eventual destruction all the sweeter." He shuffled toward the turbolift, with Vader and Piet following at a respectful distance. "Take us out of the system, Admiral. We return to Coruscant. There is much work to be done, and I will not conduct the Empire's business from a ship, no matter how impressive." "At once, Your Majesty," Piet replied, relief evident in his voice. He had feared the Emperor would blame him for the station's destruction. Many officers had died for less. As the Executor's engines fired and the massive ship began to move away from Endor, Palpatine settled into the ship's throne room, a smaller version of the one aboard the Death Star. Vader stood beside him, ever vigilant. "The boy's death changes everything," Palpatine mused, his voice thoughtful despite his earlier rage. Luke Skywalker was more than just another rebel. He was their symbol, their last Jedi, their hope incarnate. With him gone, their resolve will crumble. Perhaps Vader said. But the Alliance has proven resilient before. They may find new symbols, new leaders. The Emperor smiled, a cold expression devoid of warmth. Let them try. Without a Jedi to rally around, without the mysticism of the Force to inspire them, they are just another rebellious faction. And we know how to deal with those. He leaned forward in his throne, his eyes gleaming with malicious intelligence. We will spread word of Luke Skywalker's death throughout the galaxy. We will tell the truth that he challenged the Emperor in single combat and was destroyed. We will show the remains of the Death Star and claim that his foolish attack cost thousands of rebel lives, including his own. We will turn their victory into ashes. Vader considered this. The rebels will deny it. They will claim he survived. Of course they will, and their denial will only make our proclamation more effective. The longer they insist he lives, the more desperate they will appear. And when they cannot produce him, when weeks and months pass with no sign of their precious Jedi, doubt will spread like a cancer through their ranks. The strategy was sound, Vader had to admit. The Emperor had always been a master of psychological warfare, of turning an opponent's strengths into weaknesses. Luke's death was a tragedy for the rebellion, but handled correctly, it could be an even greater blow than losing the Death Star. What of the girl? Vader asked. She will know the truth. She shared a connection with her brother through the Force. Palpatine's smile widened. Ah, yes. Princess Leia Organa, your daughter. She presents a unique opportunity, my friend. She is young, untrained, and now consumed with grief. Such emotions make one susceptible to influence. He rose from his throne, pacing slowly across the room. We will not hunt her immediately. No, that would be too crude. Instead, we will let her grief fester. We will let her rage grow. And when she is at her most vulnerable, when the dark side whispers loudest in her mind, then we will reach out to her. You intend to turn her, Vader stated. Why not? She is strong in the Force, daughter of the Chosen One. Her potential rivals that of her brother. And unlike Luke, who was trained by Jedi fools, Leia has no such indoctrination to overcome. She is a blank canvas, waiting to be painted in shades of darkness. Vader was silent for a moment, processing this. Another Skywalker apprentice, another chance to train someone of his own bloodline in the ways of the Sith, but also another potential threat, another being who might one day challenge him as Luke had challenged his master. If she cannot be turned, Vader asked, then she will die, as her brother died. The Skywalker bloodline will end, and the Force will be purified of the Jedi taint forever. Palpatine returned to his throne, settling into it with evident satisfaction. But I believe she can be turned. Grief is a powerful motivator, Lord Vader, as you well know. The words hit closer than the Emperor perhaps intended. Vader did know the power of grief. It had driven him to betray everything he believed in, to murder those he loved, to embrace darkness so complete that no light could penetrate it. If Leia experienced even a fraction of that grief, that rage, that desperate need to prevent further loss. I will begin preparations, Vader said. If we are to turn her, we must first isolate her from the rebellion's influence. Precisely, but not yet. First, let us deal with the more immediate aftermath of Endor. The rebels may have destroyed one Death Star, but they have awakened a fury in me that they cannot comprehend. They wanted a war. They shall have one. A war so terrible, so absolute, that they will beg for the mercy of Imperial rule. The Executor jumped to hyperspace, leaving the Endor system behind. In its wake, the rebel fleet continued celebrating, unaware that their greatest victory had also sown the seeds of their darkest defeat. Luke Skywalker was dead. The Emperor had survived, and the full fury of the Empire was about to be unleashed upon the galaxy. What if Vader never turned back to the light? Part 2. The Rebellion's Darkest Hour. The celebration aboard Home One lasted exactly 17 minutes. That was how long it took for the reality of their situation to pierce through the euphoria of destroying the Death Star. They had won the battle, yes, but at what cost? And more importantly, what had they truly won? Leia Organa sat alone in a small observation room, staring out at the debris field that had been the Empire's greatest weapon. Tears streamed down her face, carving tracks through the grime of battle. Around her, she could hear the sounds of celebration, rebels embracing and cheering, but it all felt hollow to her, empty. Luke was gone. She had felt it the moment he died, a tearing sensation, as if part of her own soul had been ripped away. The connection she had shared with her twin brother, that strange bond she had never fully understood, had simply ceased. One moment he had been there, a warm presence at the edge of her consciousness. The next, there was only cold emptiness. Han Solo found her there, sitting in darkness while the fleet celebrated around her. He had been searching for her, worried by her sudden withdrawal from the victory festivities. When he saw her face, illuminated by the cold light of distant stars, his stomach dropped. "Leia," he said softly, moving to her side. "What is it? What happened?" She looked up at him, her eyes red from crying. "Luke is dead, Han. I felt him die." The words hung in the air between them, impossible to accept, yet undeniable in their truth. Han shook his head, wanting to deny it, to tell her she was mistaken, but the certainty in her voice, the absolute grief etched into every line of her face, silenced any protest he might have made. "How do you know?" he asked finally. "Did you see him? Did someone—" "I felt it," Leia interrupted. "Through the Force. We were connected, Han. Twins, brother and sister. And when he died, it was like a part of me died with him." Fresh tears spilled down her cheeks. He went to confront Vader and the Emperor. He thought he could turn his father back to the light. He thought love could overcome the dark side. She laughed bitterly, a sound devoid of humor. He was wrong. Love doesn't conquer darkness. Darkness just consumes everything, even love. Han pulled her into his arms, holding her as she wept. He had known Luke, had fought beside him, had trusted him with his life on countless occasions. The kid had been naive sometimes, too idealistic, but he had also been brave and good in a way that was rare in the galaxy. And now he was gone, killed by his own father. "We should tell the others," Han said after a moment. "Mon Mothma, Admiral Akbar. They need to know." Leia pulled away, wiping her eyes. "Not yet. Let them have this moment. They destroyed the Death Star. They won a great victory. Tomorrow is soon enough to tell them that we lost our Jedi, our last connection to the Force. Tonight, let them celebrate." But the truth could not be contained for long. Within hours, whispers began to spread through the fleet. Princess Leia's brother had gone to confront the Emperor. No one had heard from him since. The Emperor's shuttle had been detected leaving the Death Star shortly before its destruction. Luke Skywalker was missing. By morning, the celebration had curdled into uncertainty. Mon Mothma called an emergency council meeting in Home One's war room. The chamber was crowded with military leaders, politicians, and soldiers, all seeking answers that no one could provide. "We need to know what happened aboard the Death Star," Admiral Akbar said, his gravelly voice cutting through the murmur of conversation. Commander Skywalker went to confront the Emperor. If he succeeded, where is he now? If he failed? He left the sentence unfinished, but everyone understood the implication. If Luke had failed, if the Emperor had survived, then their victory was Pyrrhic at best. They had destroyed a weapon, yes, But the true power of the Empire rested not in durasteel and turbolasers, but in the ancient Sith who ruled it. Leia stood at the council table, her face composed, despite the grief that threatened to overwhelm her. She had spent the night crying in private, had allowed herself those hours of weakness. Now, as a leader of the Alliance, she needed to be strong. "Luke is dead," she announced, her voice carrying clearly across the room. "I felt his death through the Force. He confronted the Emperor and Vader in the throne room, and they killed him. The Emperor survived and escaped before the Death Star's destruction." Silence greeted her words, a stunned and terrible silence. Then chaos erupted as everyone began speaking at once, demanding details, expressing disbelief, arguing about what this meant for the Alliance. General Crix Madine raised his voice above the others. "If the Emperor survived, then we're back where we started. Maybe worse. We've shown our full strength, committed our entire fleet to this battle, and we failed to eliminate the real threat." "We destroyed the Death Star," someone countered. "That's hardly a failure." "The Death Star was just a weapon," Madine shot back. "Weapons can be rebuilt, but Palpatine is irreplaceable to the Empire. As long as he lives, the war continues." Admiral Akbar brought his webbed hand down on the table, calling for order. "Arguing among ourselves accomplishes nothing. We must assess our situation clearly and decide our next move." Mon Mothma, who had been silent throughout the exchange, finally spoke. Her voice was calm, measured, the voice of someone who had led a rebellion through its darkest hours and would continue to do so now. "Princess Leia is correct that we have lost a great asset in Luke Skywalker. He was our last Jedi, our connection to the old ways, and a symbol of hope for countless beings throughout the galaxy. His loss is a tragedy we will all feel for years to come." She paused, looking around the room at the faces of the Alliance's leadership. "But we are not defeated. The Rebel Alliance has survived worse losses than this. We have been hunted, scattered, nearly destroyed a dozen times over, and yet we endure, because our cause is just, and our resolve is unbreakable. We destroyed the Death Star," she continued, her voice growing stronger. "We dealt a blow to the Empire's military capabilities that will take years to recover from. We showed the galaxy that the Empire can be beaten, that their weapons are not invincible, that their grip on power is not absolute." General Carlis Riken stood. "What about Commander Skywalker? If the princess felt his death through the Force, might she be mistaken? Could he have survived somehow?" Leia shook her head, her expression pained. "I wish I could give you false hope, General, but I can't. Luke is gone. I felt him die as clearly as I feel you, all standing here now. There's no mistake, no possibility of error. My brother is dead." The words settled over the council like a funeral shroud. Luke Skywalker, the hero of Yavin, the last of the Jedi Knights, was dead. The reality of it was only now beginning to sink in. "Then we need to be prepared for the Empire's response," Akbar said. "Palpatine will use this to his advantage. He will proclaim Skywalker's death as proof of the Empire's superiority. We'll use it to demoralize our forces and intimidate systems that might have supported us." "He's right," Leia agreed. "The Emperor will turn Luke's death into propaganda. We need to control the narrative as much as possible. We admit that Luke died aboard the Death Star, but we frame it as a heroic sacrifice that enabled our victory. He gave his life to ensure the station's destruction, to protect the rebellion and the galaxy itself. It was a lie, or at least a distortion of the truth. Luke had died before the Death Star exploded, killed by the Emperor's lightning while his father watched. But the Alliance needed a story they could tell, a narrative that preserved hope even in the face of loss." Mon Mothma nodded slowly. "Very well. We will memorialize Commander Skywalker as a hero of the rebellion, a Jedi who gave his life in the fight against tyranny. We will not let the Empire claim his death as their victory. The council meeting continued for hours, making plans and contingencies, trying to chart a course forward in this new and darker reality. They decided to withdraw the fleet from Endor, to scatter and regroup before the Empire could mount a counterattack. They would continue the war, would press their advantage where they could, but they would do so knowing that their greatest weapon, their Jedi Knight, was gone. As the meeting finally adjourned, Leia remained behind, staring at the tactical display that showed the disposition of Imperial and Alliance forces throughout the galaxy. They looked so small, those symbols representing their fleet, so fragile compared to the Empire's vast military machine. "We can still win this," Han said, coming to stand beside her. He had stayed through the entire meeting, offering support through his presence, even when he had little strategic insight to add. "Luke wouldn't want us to give up." "I know," Leia said quietly, "but winning seems so much harder now. Luke was our hope, Han. He represented something pure and good in a galaxy full of darkness. With him gone, I feel like we're just going through the motions." "Then we find new hope," Han replied firmly. "We find it in each other, in the people we're fighting for, in every small victory we achieve. We don't need a Jedi to tell us that what we're doing is right." Leia turned to look at him, seeing the determination in his eyes, the stubborn refusal to accept defeat that had first drawn her to him. Han Solo was a scoundrel and a smuggler, but he was also one of the bravest men she had ever known. If he believed they could still win, then maybe there was hope after all. "You're right," she said, allowing herself a small smile. "We keep fighting. For Luke, and for everyone who's sacrificed for this cause. We make his death mean something." But even as she said the words, Leia felt the darkness growing inside her. Grief was transforming into anger, sorrow into rage. The Emperor had killed her brother. Vader, her father, though she didn't yet know that truth, had stood by and let it happen. They would pay for what they had done. She would make certain of that. The seeds of the dark side, planted in grief and watered with rage, were beginning to take root in Leia Organa's heart. And far away on Coruscant, the Emperor smiled, sensing through the Force the first stirrings of what he had anticipated. The daughter of Anakin Skywalker was beginning her journey into darkness. Vader's descent into absolute darkness. In the meditation chamber aboard the Executor, Darth Vader sat in absolute silence. The pressurized chamber allowed him to remove his helmet, exposing his scarred and ravaged face to the controlled atmosphere within. His mechanical breathing, so constant a companion that he barely noticed it anymore, was temporarily silenced. For these brief periods, he could exist without the constant reminder of his failures on Mustafar. But peace eluded him. In the darkness behind his closed eyelids, he saw Luke's face, the young Jedi's expression as he died, the hope fading from his eyes as he realized his father would not save him. That image haunted Vader in ways that the thousands of others he had killed did not. He had made his choice in the throne room. He had chosen the Emperor, chosen power, chosen the dark side. It was the only choice that made sense, the only choice that acknowledged reality. The light side was a lie, a fantasy that the Jedi had told themselves to avoid confronting the true nature of the Force. Anakin Skywalker had learned that lesson when he knelt before Palpatine in the Senate chambers, when he marched on the Jedi Temple, when he choked Padme on Mustafar. The light side could not save those you loved. It could only make empty promises while your loved ones died. The dark side, at least, was honest about its nature. It offered power, and power was the only currency that mattered in a cruel galaxy. And yet, the image of Luke's outstretched hand would not leave his mind. "Father, please." The words echoed in his memory, spoken in a voice so similar to Padme's that it made something in his chest ache despite all the machinery that replaced his flesh. Vader opened his eyes, staring at the chamber's walls. He had spent decades burying Anakin Skywalker, suffocating that weak and sentimental fool beneath layers of pain and hatred. He would not allow Luke's death to resurrect him. Anakin was dead. There was only Vader now, only the Dark Lord of the Sith, only the Emperor's most faithful servant. He reached out to his helmet, placed it back over his ruined head, and sealed it into place. The respirator activated with its familiar hiss, and mechanical breathing resumed. He was whole again, or as whole as he could be. The meditation chamber opened, and he stepped out into the corridor, where stormtroopers stood at attention. "Inform the Emperor that I request an audience," Vader ordered. Minutes later, he stood before Palpatine in the Executor's throne room. The Emperor regarded him with those penetrating yellow eyes, seeing far more than Vader wished to reveal. "You are troubled, my friend," Palpatine observed. "The boy's death weighs upon you." "No, Master," Vader replied. "I merely seek clarification regarding our next moves. The rebellion will be demoralized by Skywalker's death. We should press our advantage." Palpatine smiled, a knowing expression that made it clear he saw through the denial. "Of course. But first, let us discuss the matter of your suit, Lord Vader. It has served you well for many years, but technology advances. I believe it is time for an upgrade." Vader was instantly wary. The Emperor controlled every aspect of his armor, from its design to its construction. The suit was deliberately crude, intentionally painful, designed to keep him in a constant state of suffering that fueled his dark side powers. Any upgrade Palpatine offered would have strings attached. "I require no upgrades, Master. The suit functions adequately." "Adequately," Palpatine repeated, his voice dripping with false sympathy. "My friend, you deserve better than adequate. You are the Dark Lord of the Sith, my chosen apprentice. Your armor should reflect your true power, not the limitations of outdated medical technology." He rose from his throne, circling Vader like a predator studying prey. "You have proven your loyalty to me beyond any doubt. You stood firm while your own son perished before your eyes. Such dedication deserves reward." "What kind of upgrade?" Vader asked, his mechanical voice carefully neutral. "Imagine," Palpatine said, gesturing expansively, "a suit that doesn't cause you constant pain, systems that respond smoothly to your neural commands, rather than fighting against you, respiratory functions that allow you to speak without that mechanical rasp, prosthetics that rival your original limbs in sensation and capability." It sounded too good to be true, which meant it almost certainly was. "And what would you require in exchange, Master?" The Emperor's smile widened. "Your continued service, as always, and perhaps a demonstration of your commitment to the dark side. You see, Lord Vader, I have noticed a certain hesitation in you since Endor. The boy's death has affected you more than you wish to admit. I assure you, Master, my commitment is absolute." "Then prove it," Palpatine said, his voice suddenly hard. "I am dispatching you on a mission. The remains of Luke Skywalker's body were recovered from the Death Star's debris. They are being held in a secure facility on Vijun. You will go there, you will ensure his body is preserved in carbonite, and you will personally oversee its transfer to Coruscant for display." Vader's hands clenched into fists. The Emperor wanted him to handle his son's corpse, to parade Luke's body as a trophy. It was a test, a way to measure Vader's dedication to the dark side by seeing if he could treat his own child as nothing more than a piece of propaganda. "I understand, Master. It will be done." "Excellent. And when you return, we will begin the process of upgrading your armor. You will emerge from it stronger, more powerful than you have been since Mustafar. All I ask is that you embrace your role fully, without reservation, without any lingering attachments to the past." The message was clear, If Vader could complete this task, could look upon Luke's body and feel nothing, then he would receive the improvements to his armor. But if he showed any weakness, any crack in his dark side discipline, the Emperor would know, and Palpatine did not tolerate weakness in his servants. "I will not disappoint you, my master." "See that you don't," Palpatine replied, returning to his throne. "The shuttle awaits you. And Lord Vader, remember that Anakin Skywalker is dead. He died on Mustafar along with his foolish dreams and attachments. There is only you now, only Darth Vader. Do not let a dead boy resurrect a dead man." Vader bowed and left the throne room, his mind churning beneath the cold mask. The Emperor was testing him, pushing him to see how deep his commitment to the dark side truly ran. And more than that, Palpatine was ensuring that any possibility of redemption, any chance that Vader might one day turn back to the light, was permanently sealed away. The shuttle journey to Viyun took several hours. Vader spent it in meditation, steeling himself for what he was about to do. He would look upon Luke's body. He would see his son, dead by his inaction, and he would feel nothing. He would be the perfect servant of the dark side, untroubled by sentiment or remorse. Viyun was a perpetually stormy world, its atmosphere thick with acidic rain, and its surface scarred by centuries of warfare. The facility where Luke's body was held sat atop a towering cliff, its black durasteel walls illuminated by constant lightning. It was a fitting place for such a grim task. Vader's shuttle landed in the facility's hangar. Stormtroopers and technicians stood at attention as he descended the ramp, his cape billowing in the artificial wind generated by the shuttle's engines. The facility's commander, a nervous lieutenant named Erden, approached and saluted. "Lord Vader, the specimen is prepared as you requested. It awaits you in Examination Chamber 7. "Lead the way," Vader commanded. They walked through stark corridors lit by harsh white lights. The facility had been designed for weapons research before being repurposed for this particular task. Now its laboratories held the remains of the last Jedi Knight, prepared for eternal display as a warning to any who might oppose the Empire. The examination chamber was cold and sterile, its walls lined with medical equipment and scanning devices. In the center of the room, on a raised platform, lay a human form covered by a white sheet. Vader approached slowly, his mechanical footsteps echoing in the silence. "Leave us," he ordered. "All of you." The technicians and stormtroopers filed out quickly, eager to escape the Dark Lord's presence. Lieutenant Erden hesitated at the door. "My lord, if you require any assistance, I said leave." Vader's voice carried a threat that made the lieutenant's face pale. He bowed quickly and departed, the door sealing behind him with a pneumatic hiss. Alone with Luke's body, Vader stood motionless for a long moment. Then, with a gesture, he used the Force to pull away the white sheet. It fluttered to the floor, revealing what lay beneath. Luke Skywalker looked peaceful in death. The medical technicians had done their work well, cleaning away the charred marks left by Force lightning, restoring his features to a semblance of life. His eyes were closed, his hands folded across his chest. He could have been sleeping, but he wasn't sleeping. He was dead. Dead because Vader had not saved him. Dead because the Dark Lord of the Sith had chosen loyalty to the Emperor over the life of his son. Vader reached out with one black-gloved hand, hovering inches above Luke's face. Through the Force, he could feel the absence where Luke's life force had once been. The bright flame of his presence was extinguished, leaving only emptiness. This was what he had chosen. This was the price of power. "You were a fool," Vader said, his voice barely above a whisper. "You believed love could conquer the dark side. You thought you could redeem me, could resurrect Anakin Skywalker from the ashes of his failure. But Anakin is dead, boy. He died long before you were born. There is only Vader now." He turned away, unable to look at Luke's peaceful face any longer. The Emperor had been right. This was a test, and Vader had to pass it. He had to prove that he felt nothing for this dead Jedi, that any connection to Anakin Skywalker's past was severed completely. But as he stood there in that cold chamber, with Luke's body lying on the table behind him, Vader felt something he had not experienced in decades. Not since Padme died on that medical table. Not since he had screamed his rage and grief at a universe that took everything he loved. He felt doubt. Not doubt about the dark side, or about his service to the Emperor, but doubt about himself, about the choice he had made in the throne room, about whether the power he possessed was worth the price he continued to pay for it. No, he said aloud, forcing the doubt away through sheer will. This is the way. This is the only way. Power is all that matters. Sentiment is weakness. Anakin Skywalker was weak, and his weakness destroyed everyone he loved. I will not repeat his mistakes. He triggered his comlink. Lieutenant Erdan, begin the carbonite freezing process. The specimen will be transported to Coruscant within the day. At once, Lord Vader. Vader left the examination chamber, walked through the corridors, and returned to his shuttle. He did not look back. He could not afford to look back. The dark side demanded absolute commitment, and he would give it. But as his shuttle lifted off from June's stormy surface, as he left Luke Skywalker's body to be frozen and displayed as a trophy, something deep within the armor began to change. The seeds of doubt, once planted, could not be so easily removed. They would grow in the darkness, fed by memories and regrets, until they threatened to crack the foundation of everything Vader had built since Mustafar. For now, though, he pushed those thoughts aside. He had a task to complete, an upgrade to his armor to receive, and the galaxy to help the Emperor subjugate. There was no time for weakness, no room for doubt. There was only the dark side, only power, only the eternal struggle to maintain control over a cruel and uncaring universe. Darth Vader, Dark Lord of the Sith, returned to Coruscant, and Anakin Skywalker, father and former Jedi, remained buried beneath layers of machinery and pain. But he was not quite dead, not yet, not completely, and that would prove to be a problem in the days to come. The Emperor's throne room on Imperial Center, formerly known as Coruscant, was a monument to absolute power. Here, in the very heart of the Empire, Palpatine sat upon his throne and commanded a galaxy. Massive windows looked out over the planet-wide city, showing the endless streams of traffic and the towering buildings that reached toward the sky like fingers grasping at stars. Before him stood Darth Vader, his armor recently upgraded as promised. The improvements were subtle, but significant. His movements were smoother, his breathing less labored, his systems more responsive to his neural commands. The Emperor had kept his word, granting Vader enhanced capabilities in exchange for his unwavering loyalty. But some aspects of the armor remained deliberately painful, deliberately crude. Palpatine was not fool enough to give his apprentice too much comfort, too much freedom from the suffering that fueled his dark side power. The suit was still a prison, just a slightly more comfortable one, and Vader understood the message. His leash had been lengthened, but it was still a leash. The rebellion reels from their loss, Palpatine said, his voice carrying a note of satisfaction. Intel reports indicate widespread demoralization among their forces. Systems that were considering joining them now hesitate. Luke Skywalker's death has accomplished what a dozen military victories could not. And yet they continue to fight, Vader observed. The Alliance fleet has scattered, but not disbanded. They regroup in hidden bases, coordinate strikes on Imperial supply lines, spread propaganda throughout the Outer Rim. Predictable, the Emperor replied with a dismissive wave. They are rebels, after all. They will fight until they are crushed completely. Which brings us to the matter at hand. There are rumors, Lord Vader, of other Force sensitives in the galaxy, survivors of Order 66, hidden Jedi who escaped my purge, Force-sensitive children who might one day challenge our rule. Vader nodded slowly. He had heard these rumors as well. The Jedi purge had been thorough, but in a galaxy of trillions, some had inevitably slipped through the net. A few Jedi Knights had gone into hiding, changing their names, suppressing their connection to the Force, living quiet lives far from Imperial attention. "What would you have me do, my master?" Palpatine leaned forward, his yellow eyes gleaming with malicious intent. "Find them, every last one. Use whatever resources you require. The Inquisitorius, the Imperial Security Bureau, bounty hunters, whoever proves useful. I want every Force sensitive in this galaxy identified, captured, or killed. A purge of this magnitude will require significant resources." "Then take them," the Emperor snapped. "I am granting you unlimited authority in this matter, Lord Vader. You will have entire fleets at your command if necessary. This is our highest priority. While the rebellion wastes its strength on military resistance, we will eliminate any possibility of a Jedi resurgence." He stood, moving to the window to gaze out over the cityscape. Luke Skywalker was trained, powerful, and supported by the rebellion. And yet he fell before my power. Imagine how easily lesser Force users will crumble. We will make examples of them, Lord Vader. We will show the galaxy what happens to those who think to wield the Force against the Empire. Vader considered this. A galaxy-wide hunt for Force sensitives would be complex and time-consuming, but it was achievable with proper organization. More importantly, it aligned with his own interests. Every Jedi who survived was a potential threat, a reminder of the order Anakin Skywalker had betrayed. Eliminating them would secure the Empire's future and erase another piece of his past. "It will be done, my master. How shall we proceed?" Palpatine returned to his throne, settling into it with evident pleasure. "Begin with the known suspects." The Jedi Temple archives contained extensive records of Force-sensitive individuals throughout the galaxy. Though most are dead, some may have survived by fleeing to the unknown regions or disguising their abilities. Cross-reference those records with recent reports of unusual phenomena, unexplained events, rumors of magic or miracles. He paused, his expression darkening. "And pay particular attention to children. The Jedi always began their training young, believing that early indoctrination prevented corruption by the dark side. We will take a different approach. Any child discovered to have Force abilities will be given the choice: serve the Empire, or be eliminated along with their families." It was a brutal strategy, one that would terrorize the galaxy and create a new generation of Imperial servants who had never known anything but Sith rule. Vader had no moral objections. Mercy was a luxury the Empire could not afford, not when there were threats to eliminate. "I will establish protocols immediately," Vader said. "The Inquisitors will coordinate with local Imperial governors to identify suspects. Those who cannot be turned will be executed publicly, as warnings to others." "Excellent. And Lord Vader, I want you to personally handle any significant targets. If a Jedi Master is discovered, if someone emerges who might challenge our authority, I want you to face them. Let the galaxy see that the Dark Lord of the Sith is invincible, that any who oppose the Empire will be destroyed." Vader bowed. "As you wish, my master." The campaign began within days. Across the galaxy, Imperial agents activated networks of informants and spies. The Inquisitorius, a cadre of dark side users trained specifically to hunt Jedi, was unleashed with renewed fervor. Bounty hunters received lucrative contracts for Force-sensitive individuals, dead or alive. No world was safe, no hiding place secure. The first significant capture came from Dantooine. A former Jedi Knight named Dace Vinegar had been living as a moisture farmer, suppressing his connection to the Force and hoping to live out his days in peaceful anonymity. But a neighbor, hoping to curry favor with Imperial authorities, reported strange occurrences around Vinegar's farm: tools that moved by themselves, predators that avoided his land, the telltale signs of Force use. Vader arrived on Dantooine personally, accompanied by a squad of stormtroopers and an Inquisitor, designated as Seventh Sister. They found Vinegar in his humble home, meditating in a small room decorated with nothing but a simple mat and a single candle. The former Jedi looked up as Vader entered, his eyes showing resignation rather than fear. "I wondered how long it would take," Vinegar said quietly. "I've been hiding for 20 years, always knowing this day would come." "Then you know why I'm here," Vader replied, his mechanical voice echoing in the small room. "You have two choices: renounce the Jedi, swear loyalty to the Emperor, and live, or refuse, and die." Vinegar stood slowly, his weathered face showing the weight of decades. "You were once a Jedi yourself, weren't you? I can sense it, beneath all that machinery and darkness. You know what they taught us about the Force, about peace and justice." "The Jedi teachings were lies," Vader said flatly. "Their philosophy led only to weakness and extinction. The Sith understand the truth. Power is all that matters. The strong survive, the weak perish. This is the natural order. If you truly believed that, you wouldn't need to hunt down every last Jedi. You wouldn't fear a few scattered survivors hiding on backwater worlds." Vinegar smiled sadly. "The Empire hunts us because it fears us, because it knows that the light side of the Force can never be completely extinguished. As long as one Jedi remains, hope remains." Vader's hand moved to his lightsaber. "Then I will eliminate that hope, one Jedi at a time." Vinegar ignited his own lightsaber, a blue blade that illuminated the dim room. "I won't serve your Empire. If I'm to die, I'll die as a Jedi." The duel was brief and brutal. Vinegar had maintained his skills during his exile, but he was no match for Vader's raw power and decades of combat experience. Within minutes, the former Jedi lay dead on the floor of his home, another name crossed off the list of Order 66 survivors. Seventh Sister approached the body, her red-bladed lightsaber still ignited. "An example should be made, Lord Vader. We could display the corpse in the local settlement, warn others about harboring Force users." Vader considered this, then nodded. "See to it, and burn his home. Let nothing remain of his life here." As flames consumed Vinegar's humble dwelling, Vader watched with cold satisfaction. This was just the beginning. There would be dozens more like him, hiding throughout the galaxy, clinging to their Jedi ideals, and Vader would find them all. The purge continued over the following months. On Onderon, a former Jedi Padawan was discovered teaching local children about the Force. Vader arrived to find her protecting her students with a lightsaber, refusing to surrender. She and all 15 children died, their bodies displayed in the city square as a warning against accepting Jedi teaching. On Ryloth, a male Twi'lek claimed to be a Jedi survivor and began gathering followers, preaching about the eventual return of the Jedi Order. Vader infiltrated the gathering disguised as a seeker of knowledge, then slaughtered everyone present when they were assembled. 47 beings died that night, their blood staining the cavern floor. On Lothal, a young boy exhibited strong Force abilities, moving objects with his mind and sensing things before they happened. His parents tried to hide him, but Imperial agents tracked them down. Vader gave them one chance to turn their son over for Imperial training. When they refused, he killed the parents and took the boy by force. The child's name was Ezra Bridger, and his fate would be to serve the Empire or die in the attempt. Each victory added to Vader's reputation. Stories spread throughout the galaxy of the Dark Lord's merciless efficiency, his ability to find anyone anywhere, his willingness to destroy entire communities to eliminate a single Jedi. The message was clear. The age of the Jedi was over. The Sith ruled now, and their rule was absolute. But for every Jedi captured or killed, Vader found his thoughts returning to Luke. His son had been stronger than many of these remnants, more skilled, more committed to the Jedi ideals, and yet Luke too had fallen, killed by the Emperor's lightning while Vader watched. The parallel was inescapable. These Jedi died because they clung to outdated beliefs, because they refused to accept the reality of power. Luke had died for the same reason. Sometimes, in the depths of his meditation chamber, Vader wondered if there had been another path. If he had chosen differently in the throne room, if he had turned against the Emperor to save his son, what would have happened? Could they have defeated Palpatine together? Could father and son have ruled the Empire, bringing order to the galaxy without the Emperor's cruel machinations? But these were dangerous thoughts, the kind that led to doubt and hesitation. Vader pushed them away each time they surfaced, buried them beneath the certainty that he had made the right choice. Power was everything. The dark side was the only path. Sentiment was weakness that could not be tolerated. And yet, the thoughts kept returning, like ghosts that refused to be exorcised. With each Jedi he killed, with each Force-sensitive child he corrupted or eliminated, Vader saw Luke's face, the outstretched hand, the plea for help that went unanswered, the light fading from his son's eyes as death claimed him. The Emperor watched Vader's progress with approval. His apprentice was executing the purge with ruthless efficiency, eliminating threats and spreading terror throughout the Force-sensitive community. But Palpatine also sensed the darkness growing within Vader, the unresolved conflict that gnawed at the edges of his consciousness. It concerned the Emperor, but not overmuch. As long as Vader continued to serve, as long as his power remained firmly in the dark side's grip, these lingering doubts were merely echoes of a dead man. Still, Palpatine decided it was time to redirect Vader's attention. The Jedi Purge could continue under the Inquisitor's supervision. Vader's talents were needed elsewhere, for a task even more important, the corruption of Leia Organa. Lord Vader, the Emperor announced during one of their regular communications, I have a new assignment for you. The time has come to deal with the remaining Skywalker. Vader's mechanical breathing paused, just for a moment. The girl. Your daughter, yes. Intelligence indicates she has grown increasingly reckless in her grief, taking personal command of rebel operations, leading missions that place her in considerable danger. She blames the Empire for her brother's death, and that anger is making her careless. She is ready, Lord Vader, ready to be turned or destroyed. What would you have me do? Palpatine's smile was predatory. Capture her. Bring her before me. We will see if the daughter of Anakin Skywalker has the strength to embrace the dark side, or if she will follow her brother into death. Either way, the Skywalker bloodline will finally serve its true purpose, the eternal reign of the Sith. Leia's journey to the dark side. 6 months had passed since Luke's death, and Leia Organa barely recognized herself anymore. The princess who had once advocated for diplomatic solutions, who had believed in the power of democracy and justice, seemed like a distant memory. In her place stood someone harder, angrier, more willing to embrace violence if it achieved results. She stood on the bridge of the rebel cruiser Independence, watching through the viewport as Imperial supply ships erupted in flames. The ambush had been perfect. 3 supply convoys carrying weapons and armor to Imperial garrisons in the Outer Rim, all destroyed in coordinated attacks. Hundreds of Imperial personnel dead. Millions of credits in military equipment reduced to wreckage. Target destruction confirmed, reported the tactical officer. All 3 convoys neutralized. Our losses are minimal. Good, Leia said coldly. Set course for the rally point. We'll regroup and plan the next operation. Han Solo stood beside her, his expression troubled. He had been with her through all of it, supporting her crusade against the Empire. But he was growing increasingly concerned about the changes he saw in her. The woman he loved was becoming someone else, someone consumed by rage and grief. "Leia," he said quietly, "we need to talk about this." "About what?" "The successful completion of our mission." "About you," Han insisted. "About what you're becoming. These ambushes, these attacks, they're getting more aggressive, more brutal. You're not just fighting the Empire anymore. You're trying to hurt them, to make them suffer." Leia turned to face him, her eyes flashing with anger. "They killed my brother, Han. They killed Luke, and you expect me to what? Show restraint? Fight them with one hand tied behind my back? The Empire doesn't understand mercy, only strength, so I'll give them strength." "This isn't you," Han said, moving closer and lowering his voice so only she could hear. "I know you're hurting. I know you miss Luke. But this path you're on, this anger and hatred, it's not going to bring him back. It's only going to destroy you." For a moment, something flickered in Leia's expression, a brief glimpse of the woman she had been. Then it was gone, replaced by cold determination. "Maybe I need to be destroyed. Maybe that's the only way to defeat the Empire, by becoming as ruthless as they are." She walked away, leaving Han standing alone on the bridge. He wanted to follow her, to make her understand, but he knew it would be pointless. Leia was on a dark path, and nothing he said seemed capable of turning her back. What Han didn't know was that Leia was experiencing something beyond simple grief. Ever since Luke's death, she had felt the Force awakening within her, responding to her emotions, amplifying her anger and pain. She didn't understand what was happening, had no training to guide her, but she could feel power growing inside her. Power that whispered promises of revenge, of justice, of making the Empire pay for everything they had taken from her. The dark side was calling to Leia Organa, and she was listening. In his throne room on Imperial Center, the Emperor felt Leia's growing darkness through the Force, and smiled. "The seed has sprouted," he murmured to himself. "Soon it will be time to harvest it." He had been patient, allowing Leia's grief to fester, letting her anger build without interference. Now, as he sensed her teetering on the edge of the dark side's abyss, it was time to push her over, and for that, he needed Darth Vader. "Lord Vader," Palpatine said, "the girl is ready. I want you to arrange her capture, but do so carefully. She must not be harmed, not physically. We need her intact, capable of training in the Force. Can you do this?" Vader, standing before his master's throne, nodded. "I will lure her into a trap. She has been leading missions personally. I will provide her with intelligence on a high-value Imperial target, one she cannot resist attacking. When she arrives, I will be waiting." "Excellent. And Lord Vader, when you confront her, tell her the truth. Tell her that you are her father, that Luke was her brother, that the Skywalker bloodline runs in her veins. The shock of this revelation, combined with her grief and anger, will make her vulnerable to manipulation." It was a risky strategy. Revealing his identity could provoke Leia to resist even more strongly, but it could also shatter her worldview, make her question everything she believed about herself and her place in the galaxy. In that moment of vulnerability, with proper guidance, she could be turned. "I understand, my master." The trap was set within weeks. Vader arranged for rebel spies to intercept communications about a secret Imperial facility on Bespin, supposedly housing high-ranking officials and vital intelligence about upcoming military operations. The intelligence was detailed enough to be credible, tempting enough to draw Leia personally. She took the bait. Against the advice of Mon Mothma and Admiral Akbar, against Han Solo's protests, Leia assembled a strike team and headed for Bespin. She was driven by a need to strike back at the Empire, to hurt them as they had hurt her. The possibility of capturing Imperial officials, of extracting information that could cripple their operations, was too valuable to pass up. The Independence dropped out of hyperspace, near Bespin's gas giant. Sensors showed minimal Imperial presence, just a few patrol ships, and the Cloud City garrison. No sign of the expected defenses or the high-value targets. Leia should have recognized the trap, should have listened to the instincts that had served her so well throughout the war. But grief and rage had clouded her judgment. "Something's wrong," Han said from the co-pilot's seat of the Millennium Falcon, which had joined the strike force. "It's too quiet. Where are the patrols? Where are the defenses?" "Maybe we caught them off guard," Leia suggested, but even she didn't sound convinced. They landed at Cloud City without incident, finding the platform strangely deserted. No administrative staff, no citizens, no guards, just empty corridors and the sound of wind whistling through the city's structures. "It's a trap," Han said flatly. "We need to leave now." But before they could retreat to their ships, blast doors sealed every exit. Lights flickered and died, plunging the corridors into darkness. And through that darkness, Leia heard a sound that made her blood run cold. Mechanical breathing, steady and inevitable. "Princess Leia!" Vader's voice resonated through the corridor, amplified by his suit's systems. "We have much to discuss." Leia drew her blaster, though she knew it would be useless against a Sith Lord. "Show yourself!" Vader emerged from the shadows, his black armor absorbing what little light remained. He moved slowly, deliberately, radiating menace with every step. Behind him came stormtroopers, their weapons raised and ready. "You cannot escape," Vader said. "Your companions will not be harmed if you surrender peacefully. Resist, and they will die." "Like you killed Luke?" Leia spat, her finger tightening on the trigger. "Like you stood by and watched while your own son was murdered." Vader stopped, his mask turning to regard her fully. "So you know. Yes, I am Darth Vader. I was once Anakin Skywalker, Jedi Knight, and your father. Luke Skywalker was my son, and you are my daughter. But Anakin Skywalker is dead, Princess. There is only Vader now." The words hit Leia like physical blows. She had suspected, had felt the connection through the Force, but having it confirmed, hearing Vader acknowledge it, made it real in a way that nothing else could. "No," she whispered. "That's impossible." "Search your feelings," Vader said, echoing the words he had spoken to Luke. "You know it to be true. You can sense it through the Force, the same power that connected you to your brother. The Skywalker blood flows through your veins, Princess. You have the same potential that Luke possessed, the same connection to the Force." Leia wanted to deny it, wanted to scream that it was a lie. But she couldn't. The truth of it resonated within her, undeniable and terrible. Darth Vader, the Empire's enforcer, the monster who had murdered countless beings in service to tyranny, was her father. And Luke had known. Her brother had known and hadn't told her, had gone to confront their father believing he could turn him back to the light. Luke had died for that belief, killed by a father who watched him perish without lifting a hand to save him. The rage that filled Leia in that moment was unlike anything she had experienced before. It burned through her veins like fire, consuming rational thought, feeding on years of pain and loss. Her mother, dead in childbirth. Alderaan, destroyed by the Death Star. Luke, murdered by the Emperor's lightning. All of it, every tragedy in her life, could be traced back to one source. Anakin Skywalker, the man who became Darth Vader. "You," she hissed, raising her blaster. "You destroyed everything. My mother, my world, my brother. You're the cause of all of it." "Yes," Vader agreed simply. "I am." Anakin Skywalker's fear and ambition led him down the path to the dark side. He believed he could save Padme through power, but his actions only hastened her death. He destroyed the Jedi Order, helped create the Empire, and lived for decades as a tool of the Emperor's will. That is the truth you must accept, Princess. I am your father, and I am a monster. He moved closer, ignoring the blaster aimed at his chest. But you have a choice that your brother did not. Luke believed in redemption, in the possibility of turning me back to the light. He died for that foolish belief. You need not make the same mistake. What are you talking about? Leia demanded, though she felt the Force swirling around them dark and seductive. The Emperor offers you an opportunity. Join us. Learn the ways of the Force, embrace your potential, and help us bring order to the galaxy. Or refuse, and die, as Luke died. Those are your only options. I'll never join you, Leia snarled. I'll never serve the Empire or the Emperor. I'd rather die. Vader tilted his head, studying her. Would you? You claim to prefer death, but your actions suggest otherwise. You have been waging a campaign of revenge against the Empire, attacking our forces with increasing brutality. That is not the behavior of someone ready to die. That is the behavior of someone embracing the dark side. Leia opened her mouth to deny it, but the words wouldn't come, because Vader was right. She had been consumed by rage, by a need for vengeance that went beyond military necessity. She had enjoyed watching Imperial ships explode, had felt satisfaction at inflicting casualties on the enemy. She had been drawing on the dark side without realizing it, using her anger to fuel her actions. I fight for the rebellion, she said, but her voice lacked conviction. For freedom and justice. You fight for revenge, Vader corrected. You want to hurt the Empire as it hurt you. You want to make us pay for Luke's death, for Alderaan's destruction, for every injustice you have suffered. There's nothing wrong with that desire, Princess. It is natural, honest. The light side would tell you to let go of your anger, to forgive and move on. But the dark side offers something better, the power to act on that anger, to transform it into strength. He extended his hand toward her. I stood by while Luke died because I had chosen my path, committed fully to the dark side. But you, my daughter, have not yet made that choice. You stand at a crossroads. One path leads to death, to following your brother into oblivion. The other leads to power beyond imagining, to the ability to shape the galaxy according to your will. Choose wisely. Leia's hand shook as she held the blaster. Every fiber of her being screamed at her to refuse, to spit in Vader's face and die with honor. But another part of her, a part that had been growing stronger since Luke's death, whispered different advice. Why die? Why throw away her life when she could live, could become powerful enough to truly challenge the Empire? The rebellion was losing. Month by month, they lost ground, lost ships, lost lives. Traditional resistance wasn't working. Maybe it was time for a different approach. What would I have to do? She asked, and immediately hated herself for the question. Come with me to Coruscant, Vader replied. Meet with the Emperor. Let him show you the true power of the dark side. If you still wish to refuse after that, after seeing what you could become, then we will respect your decision. But I believe you will make the right choice, as I did decades ago. It was a lie, of course. Once she was on Coruscant, once she was in the Emperor's power, there would be no choice. She would be turned or killed. But Leia found herself considering it anyway, weighing the slim chance of survival and power against the certainty of death if she refused. Behind her, she heard Han's voice, calling her name. Her companions were fighting the stormtroopers, trying to reach her. They would die if this continued. All of them would die. And for what? To preserve her pride, to avoid the taint of the dark side. If I come with you, Leia said slowly, you let my companions go. No pursuit, no retaliation. They returned to the rebellion safely. Agreed, Vader said without hesitation. You have my word. Leia lowered her blaster, and with it, lowered the last defenses of her light side self. She had made her choice, taken the first step down a path that would lead her into darkness. The journey of Leia Organa from Rebel Princess to Sith Apprentice had begun. As stormtroopers took her into custody and ushered her toward Vader's shuttle, Leia looked back to see Han and the others being released as promised. Han was shouting, fighting to reach her, but the stormtroopers held him back. Their eyes met across the distance, and in that moment, Leia wanted to scream, to tell him to forget her, to focus on the rebellion. But no words came. She simply turned away and followed Vader into the shuttle. On Coruscant, the Emperor waited with anticipation. The daughter of Skywalker was coming to him, her soul already darkened by grief and rage. Soon she would be fully corrupted, another Sith to serve his empire, another tool in his eternal grip on power. The Empire's dominion over the galaxy was about to become absolute, and the last hope of the light side was about to be extinguished forever. The chamber deep within the Imperial Palace was a place of ancient power. Here, where the Jedi Temple had once stood before being converted to the Emperor's residence, the dark side pooled like invisible water, fed by centuries of suffering and the Emperor's own malevolent will. This was where Palpatine brought Leia Organa to complete her corruption. She stood before him now, still wearing her rebel uniform, her hands bound in force-suppressing cuffs. But the cuffs were unnecessary. Leia was not trying to escape, was not fighting against her captivity. Instead, she watched the Emperor with a mixture of fear and fascination, drawn to the power that radiated from him, despite every instinct that told her to run. Princess Leia Organa, Palpatine said, his voice a serpentine whisper that seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere. Daughter of Anakin Skywalker, sister of Luke Skywalker, last of a bloodline that has shaped galactic history for decades. Welcome to your destiny. What do you want from me? Leia asked, though she already knew the answer. The Emperor smiled, revealing yellowed teeth. I want what I always want, to turn potential into power, to transform light into darkness, to prove once again that the dark side is the only true path to understanding the Force. He rose from his throne, circling her like a predator studying prey. Your brother believed he could redeem his father. He thought love and hope could overcome decades of Sith training, could resurrect Anakin Skywalker from the tomb of Darth Vader's armor. He was wrong, of course, and his failure killed him. Leia felt tears pricking her eyes, but refused to let them fall. She would not show weakness before this monster, would not give him the satisfaction of seeing her break. But you, Palpatine continued, you are different from your brother. Luke was naive, idealistic, believing in redemption and second chances. You are a pragmatist, Princess. You understand that sometimes the ends justify the means, that noble goals may require ignoble actions. This is why you led brutal attacks against Imperial forces, why you prioritized revenge over mercy. You are already walking the path to the dark side. I am simply offering to show you how far that path extends. I won't become like you, Leia said, but her voice wavered. I won't betray everything I believe in. Everything you believed in has failed, the Emperor countered. The rebellion is losing. Month by month, we reclaim territory you thought secured. Your allies abandon you, your resources dwindle, your hope fades. The Empire is eternal, Princess. We cannot be defeated by conventional means. The only way to truly challenge us is to wield power equal to ours, and that power comes from the dark side. He gestured, and the force-suppressing cuffs fell away from Leia's wrists. She felt her connection to the Force return, that strange and frightening power she had felt growing within her since Luke's death. It was intoxicating and terrifying in equal measure. Feel it, Palpatine urged. Feel the power that runs through your blood, The same power your father possessed, the same power that made your brother a threat to the Empire. This is your birthright, Princess, the Skywalker gift. Do you really want to let it die with you, unexplored and wasted? Leia did feel it. The Force flowed through her, responding to her emotions, amplifying her anger and pain. She could sense Palpatine's power, vast and ancient, could feel Vader's dark presence somewhere in the palace above them, and she could feel her own potential, raw and untapped, waiting to be unleashed. "What would you teach me?" she asked, and knew that with those words, she had taken another step into darkness. The Emperor's smile widened. "Everything. The nature of the Force, the secrets of power, the techniques that will make you invincible. I will teach you to channel your grief into strength, your rage into purpose. I will show you that the dark side is not evil, merely honest about the brutal realities of existence. Power matters, Princess. Everything else is illusion." Over the following weeks, Leia's training began in earnest. The Emperor started with simple exercises, teaching her to manipulate small objects with the Force, to sense the emotions of others, to project her will across distances. Then came more advanced techniques: Force lightning, Force choke, the ability to cloud minds and manipulate perceptions. With each lesson, with each use of dark side powers, Leia felt herself changing. The guilt she initially experienced at using such abilities faded, replaced by a cold satisfaction at her growing competence. The grief over Luke's death remained, but it transformed from a wound into a weapon, fuel for her dark side power. Vader watched his daughter's progress with mixed feelings. She learned quickly, adapting to the dark side with frightening ease. Her connection to the Force was strong, potentially as powerful as Luke's had been. And unlike her brother, Leia had no Jedi training to undo, no light side indoctrination to overcome. She came to the dark side as a blank slate, ready to be molded into whatever the Emperor desired. But Vader also saw echoes of Padme in Leia's face, heard his wife's voice in his daughter's tone. It stirred memories he had thought long buried, reminded him of what Anakin Skywalker had lost when he embraced the dark side. Sometimes, in his meditation chamber, Vader wondered if he was watching history repeat itself, if Leia was making the same mistakes that had destroyed her father. 6 months after her capture, Leia stood before the Emperor for a final test. She wore black robes now, similar to those worn by the Inquisitors, and a lightsaber hung at her belt. The weapon had been constructed under the Emperor's guidance, its blade burning crimson like all Sith sabers. "You have learned much, my young apprentice," Palpatine said, "but knowledge alone does not make one Sith. There must be commitment, demonstrated through action. Tell me, what do you desire most in this galaxy?" Leia considered the question carefully. 6 months ago, she would have said freedom for the galaxy, victory for the rebellion, justice for the oppressed. Now, those ideals seemed naive and hollow. What did she truly want? "Revenge," she answered honestly. "Revenge against the Empire for everything it has taken from me. My mother, my world, my brother. I want to make you all pay." The Emperor laughed, a cackling sound that echoed through the chamber. "Excellent. Such honesty, such purity of purpose. This is the dark side in its truest form, Princess. Not mystical philosophy or abstract principles, but raw desire made manifest." He gestured toward a holoscreen that materialized before them. The Rebel Alliance continues to resist, though their efforts grow increasingly futile. They gather their remaining forces for one final assault on Imperial Center, a desperate attempt to decapitate the Empire by killing me. They will fail, of course. Our defenses are impenetrable, but I offer you an opportunity, my apprentice. The holoscreen showed tactical displays of rebel fleet movements, highlighted familiar ships and commanders: Mon Mothma, Admiral Akbar, General Madine, and there, piloting the Millennium Falcon, Han Solo, and Chewbacca. Your former allies plan to die in a futile gesture of defiance, Palpatine continued. You could stop them. Go to them. Tell them of your transformation. Convince them to surrender. Those who swear loyalty to the Empire will be spared. Those who refuse will be executed. What say you, Princess? Or should I call you by a new name? Lady Leia, perhaps? Or Darth? No, Leia interrupted. I won't take a Sith name. I know who I am. I'm Leia Organa, daughter of Bail and Breha, sister of Luke Skywalker. Becoming Sith doesn't erase that. It just means I've stopped lying to myself about what power requires. The Emperor considered this, then nodded. As you wish. Then go, Leia Organa. Go to your former comrades and offer them one final chance at survival. Show them the futility of resistance. And if they refuse, show them the power of the dark side. The rebel fleet assembled at Sullust, gathering their remaining forces for what they knew might be their final battle. 2/3 of their original strength was gone, lost to attrition and increasingly effective Imperial counterattacks. But those who remained were determined to make one last stand, to strike at the heart of the Empire, even if it cost them everything. Mon Mothma stood on the bridge of Home One, reviewing tactical displays with Admiral Akbar. The plan was desperate. Break through Imperial Center's orbital defenses, deploy strike teams to infiltrate the palace, and assassinate the Emperor. It had almost no chance of success, but they had no other options. The rebellion was dying. This was their last roll of the dice. A ship is approaching, the communications officer announced. Transmitting rebel codes, but they're badly out of date. It's the Rogue Shadow, last registered to Princess Leia Organa. Mon Mothma's heart leaped. They had received no word from Leia since her capture on Bespin 6 months ago. Intelligence suggested she was being held on Imperial Center, possibly dead. To have her return now on the eve of their final battle seemed too good to be true. Let her through, Mon Mothma ordered, but maintain defensive posture. This could be a trick. The Rogue Shadow docked in Home One's hangar bay. The airlocks opened and Leia emerged. But the woman who stepped onto the deck bore little resemblance to the princess the rebels remembered. She wore black robes, moved with predatory grace, and her eyes held a cold hardness that had not been there before. Han Solo was waiting in the hangar, having refused to leave when he heard Leia's ship approaching. He rushed toward her, joy and relief evident on his face. Leia, thank the stars. I thought I'd never see you again. How did you escape? Are you hurt? Leia looked at him, and something in her expression made Han stop in his tracks. I didn't escape, Han. I'm here because the Emperor sent me. I'm here to offer you all one final chance at survival. The words hung in the air, incomprehensible at first. Then their meaning sank in, and Han felt his blood turn to ice. No, Leia. Tell me you didn't. Tell me they didn't turn you. Leia ignited her lightsaber, its crimson blade casting red shadows across the hangar bay. The Emperor taught me the truth about power, about what it takes to actually change the galaxy, instead of just fighting a losing war. I'm here to give you all the same choice I was given. Join the Empire and live, or continue this futile resistance and die. Mon Mothma, Admiral Akbar, and dozens of rebel soldiers had gathered in the hangar by now. They stared at Leia in horror, unable to process what they were seeing. Princess Leia Organa, one of the rebellion's founding leaders, standing before them with a Sith lightsaber and offering them terms of surrender. We'll never surrender, Mon Mothma said, her voice steady despite the shock. You, of all people, should know that, Leia. The rebellion fights for freedom, for justice, for everything you once believed in. I believed in a lie, Leia replied coldly. I believed that righteousness would triumph, that the light side would prevail over darkness. My brother died, believing the same thing. I won't make Luke's mistake. Power is all that matters in this galaxy, and the Empire has it. Join us or be destroyed. Those are your only options. Han stepped forward, his hand moving toward his blaster. Leia, listen to yourself. This isn't you. This is what they made you. The Emperor, Vader. They twisted you, used your grief to corrupt you. But you can still come back. We can still... Still what? Leia interrupted, her voice rising. Still lose? Still watch as the Empire crushes us system by system? Still pretend that our noble ideals matter when we're being systematically eliminated? She deactivated her lightsaber, looking at Han with something that might have been regret. I loved you, Han. Part of me still does. But love isn't enough. It wasn't enough to save my mother. Wasn't enough to save Alderaan. Wasn't enough to save Luke. The only thing that matters is power, and I finally have it. She turned to address the assembled rebels. You have 1 hour to decide. Surrender to the Empire, swear loyalty to the Emperor, and you'll be spared. Refuse, and I'll return with the Imperial fleet to destroy you. The choice is yours. With that, she walked back to her ship. Han tried to follow, but rebel soldiers held him back. They watched helplessly as the rogue shadow departed, carrying with it the last vestiges of hope that Leia Organa could be redeemed. The rebel leadership convened in emergency session. The arguments were heated and desperate. Some advocated for accepting Leia's terms, believing that survival was more important than pride. Others insisted they could never surrender to the Empire, that death was preferable to serving tyranny. Mon Mothma listened to all voices, then made her decision. We fight, she announced. We've always known this war might cost us everything. If today is the day we fall, then we fall as free people, not as Imperial slaves. Prepare the fleet for battle. We're going to Coruscant. The final battle was brief and devastating. When the rebel fleet emerged from hyperspace near Imperial Center, they found themselves facing not just orbital defense platforms, but 3 full Imperial fleets. The trap had been perfectly laid. Palpatine had used Leia's offer of surrender to buy time, to position his forces for a crushing victory. Leia led the attack herself, flying an advanced TIE interceptor and coordinating Imperial forces with ruthless efficiency. She knew the rebels' tactics, their strategies, their weaknesses. Every piece of intel she possessed was now turned against her former comrades. Home One took devastating damage in the first minutes of battle. Mon Mothma died when a turbo laser blast penetrated the bridge, killing her and most of the Alliance High Command instantly. Admiral Akbar's cruiser, trying to cover the flagship's retreat, was overwhelmed by TIE bombers and destroyed with all hands. The Millennium Falcon, piloted by Han Solo and Chewbacca, fought desperately to escape the carnage, but Leia anticipated their moves, cut off their escape route, forced them into a dead-end corridor of space, where Imperial Star destroyers waited. The Falcon's shields collapsed under concentrated fire. The ship, which had survived so many impossible situations, finally met its end in a massive explosion that consumed Han, Chewbacca, and the last remnants of Leia Organa's former life. Within hours, it was over. The rebel fleet was destroyed. The Alliance leadership was dead. Scattered cells throughout the galaxy, hearing of the disaster, either surrendered or went deep into hiding, knowing that continued resistance was suicide. The Rebel Alliance, which had fought against Imperial tyranny for decades, which had destroyed 2 Death Stars and given the galaxy hope, was no more. The Empire had won. In the throne room on Imperial Center, Emperor Palpatine gazed out at his domain with satisfaction. Beside him stood Darth Vader and Leia Organa, the father and daughter now united in darkness. The Skywalker bloodline, which might have been the Empire's downfall, instead served as its ultimate tool of dominion. It is done, Palpatine said. The rebellion is destroyed. The Jedi are extinct. The Sith rule supreme. The galaxy is ours now and forever. Vader and Leia said nothing. standing in silent testimony to the Empire's victory. They were monuments to the dark side's triumph, proof that even the strongest light could be extinguished. And in that moment, as the Emperor's laughter echoed through the throne room, any remaining hope for the galaxy flickered out, like a dying candle. Darkness had won. The age of the Sith was eternal, conclusion and call to action. And so the galaxy descended into an age of darkness from which it would never escape. Without Luke Skywalker's sacrifice, without the redemption of Anakin Skywalker, without the destruction of the Emperor, the Empire ruled unchallenged for decades. Palpatine, sustained by dark side techniques and Sith alchemy, lived far beyond a natural lifespan, his grip on power absolute. Vader became more machine than man, his body further augmented with cybernetic enhancements that granted him terrible power at the cost of his last vestiges of humanity. He served the Emperor faithfully until the end of his days, never again troubled by doubts or dreams of redemption. When he finally died, it was not in a moment of heroic sacrifice, but simply from the accumulated weight of decades of suffering and dark side corruption. Leia Organa became Lady Leia, the Emperor's enforcer, hunting down the last remnants of resistance throughout the galaxy. She never forgot Han Solo, never stopped seeing his face in her nightmares, but she learned to channel that pain into power. She became one of the most feared beings in the galaxy, a Sith apprentice whose cruelty exceeded even Vader's. The galaxy itself was transformed into a totalitarian nightmare. Force-sensitive children were identified at birth and either trained to serve the Empire or eliminated. Democratic institutions were systematically dismantled. Entire species were enslaved or exterminated if they showed insufficient loyalty. The light side of the Force faded to the barest whisper, overwhelmed by the ocean of darkness that the Sith had created. This is what happened when Darth Vader stood by and watched his son die. This is what happened when love failed, when hope was extinguished, when darkness went unopposed. The galaxy that might have been saved, instead, fell into eternal night. If you've enjoyed this dark exploration of what might have been, please consider liking this video and subscribing to the channel. Your support helps me create more deep dives into Star Wars lore, exploring alternate timelines, Sith history, and the darker corners of the galaxy far, far away. And if there's a particular topic you'd like me to cover, a what-if scenario you'd like explored, or a piece of Sith history you want to learn about, leave a comment below. This channel exists because of viewers like you, and your input directly shapes the content I create. Until next time, may the Force be with you, even if that Force is dark as the void between stars. Sleep well, dreamers, and remember, in some timelines, hope dies, and darkness reigns forever.